Welcome back to Foundation Paper Piecing Series 4 for August. The bees are busy, aren't they, though? That's that time of year where it's warm outside and it's just full on bees, sometimes too many bees, right? Well, we're celebrating that. They do such an important job. We can't survive without these little critters here. And so you're seeing this. We did some magic in their wings with some fairy frost, with some glitter fabric. So we really had a lot of fun choosing the fabrics for this one. Hopefully you've caught the bug of foundation paper piecing. It is a lot of fun to learn, not intuitive. So I'll review those steps today, but if you're brand new or maybe had a negative experience learning foundation paper piecing, it's like my brain can't wrap around that. I understand that. I also had a very negative experience with foundation paper piecing and put it aside for almost 3 decades until I saw people at retreats doing Judy Niemeyer projects, small projects and everything in between, and I'm thinking, why can they get this and I can't? And then someone showed me a technique, and that's what I'm going to be showing you today. It is not intuitive, but once you catch the rhythm, you'll be on your way. So I'm going to make this so basic so that if you've had as I said, not a great experience or you've never done this before, today we're doing it together. Kits are the way to go. We make this easy for you to just pick up the kit. You're getting all those same exact fabrics, including those beautiful glitter fabrics for the wings. The outer border, your binding, your backing fabric, and there's a little bit extra for the hanging sleeve. We have this displayed on our paisleys and polka dot display, which is such a pretty way to do that. If you've been watching our series, you're used to seeing them on the Ackfelt table display, or sometimes we use what's called a French curl. It works really well with every single project really, where you're able to switch that out. Maybe you want to display that on a wall. If that's you, that's a great option. This may be a nice option, and I actually enjoy working with putting these kits together. They're perfectly cut, perfectly engineered, and I get to glue them together and then paint them, and I really enjoyed that. So check that out if you're curious. Okay, let's talk about the process, because once you know the process and you establish these practices, these disciplines, and these rhythms, you'll be able to consistently do this every single time. In your kit, in addition to all the fabrics we spoke about, you're getting a full color pattern. That's always important, right? So when you get your fabrics out, you can clearly identify them because you're like, oh, I've got 3 yellows here, I've got some teals. You clearly want to be able to identify those. That's why we give you a picture. Get those fabrics out of your kit, add plenty of sizing, iron everything good and flat. Now we are getting ready to make some cuts, and inside your pattern you're going to find some stickers. These are going to sync up right away. We can put the foundations aside for now. These are the papers that we print everything on, because that's the whole concept, right? That we're going to have paper on one side, fabric on the other. We're going to be doing this portion together today, by the way. That's why that's missing. And you're like, how does that happen? A little bit later on, we'll talk about that. But first, we need to get everything precisely cut. That's why we're going to be referring to our instructions inside our pattern. And as soon as we make that first cut right here, we're cutting our yellow 1. We call that particular fabric yellow 1, 2 by 3.5, and we're going to call that A1. And look at that, our first sticker on our sheet is A1. Our next one happens to be yellow 2. A3 happens to be here. Don't worry about why A2 wasn't next. We sync up our stickers to be in the same exact cutting sequence. Once you have all your fabrics cut out and every single fabric is stickered, and as we can see on our stickers, we have A, B, C, and D. And that is just because the way we decided to construct our foundation paper piecing block is we have an A portion, a B, a C, and a D. So that's why on our foundation papers, as we look at those, we have our A and our B and our C and our D. Just like we would do with any quilt block. You're going to do maybe your top row, your middle row, your bottom row, and then sew them together. Same concept. We're going to work on a section at a time using the same technique no matter what section we move to, and then later be sewing those sections together. So that's the general concept of foundation paper piecing. Once we have all of our fabrics cut out and all of our fabrics are labeled, and we know we have A, B, C, and D, get those A fabrics together and get them organized from number 1 all the way to, let's see what our highest number would be, number 9. So there'll be A1, 2, 3, all the way to 9. We'll roughly cut around our A shape. Don't cut on this outermost line yet. That's a trim up line we'll be trimming on later. So trim outside, cut outside of that. Put that A paper along with those A fabrics that have already been stickered. Do the same thing with your B fabrics. We'll get those in order. B1 through, let's see, our highest number appears to be B5, okay? Again, roughly cut around B, put those with the fabrics that have been stickered, and we follow suit with C and D until we're ready to go. Now we begin a process. The first step of each of those sections, the A, B, C, and D, will be identical, and that is that the very first piece, A1, B1, C1, and D1, is treated differently than the other pieces inside that section. And the only difference is, and I have my D section already cut out here, is that the very first piece is glued to the back of our paper. So I want you to remember, this is the first thing to jot down. That's just kind of a refresher. When you step away from foundation paper piecing for a while, you have to reacclimate to that, reorient yourself. So this is a good one to write down. The back of the fabric goes to the back of the paper. So as we look at our fabrics here, I have them organized. We're going to be doing the D section together. The back of my D1 will go to the back of my fabric, and the goal will always be that we want to cover not just the footprint, not just the outline of D1, but a 1/4 inch all the way around at least. So I'm going to put my sticker over here. And you say, how do we attach this? Like, how's that going to happen? We use a glue, and I like to use my Soline glue pen. I love that this dries clear and it's water soluble. I have made the mistake of using a child's glue that was purple. It did not dry clear. On a dark fabric, that wouldn't be a problem, but I happened to put that on the back of a white fabric. Got all the way through my project. Even when I removed the paper, there was a little bit of that glue that was still on my fabric, and it showed through. So please, whatever you end up using, if you're not going to use the Soline glue pen, choose something that will dry clear for certain. But this is what we choose here, and it comes with a refill. So this is just a great product that is tried and true. Okay, so we need to position our fabric back to back and make sure that we have covered this footprint plus a 1/4 inch around. Don't worry about measuring. It's just a visual estimation of what that is. And you say, well, how do I know? Like, how am I looking back and forth? Well, this is where a light source becomes a very important component. I have a light pad on set with me. This is the Wafer One light pad. You could also hold that up to the light. Maybe if you have a sliding glass door where you're like, okay, I think I have it in the right position, right? For us, I'm going to go ahead and use this resource because I use it for everything. I use it for applique. I use it for tracing hand embroidery. I use it for foundation paper piecing. I use a light box a lot. Okay, let's turn that on. And as you can see from the top, I now absolutely have that 1/4 inch all the way around. So what I'll do is I'm going to put this on the back of my B1, just like this. Turn that back on, make sure I'm in a good spot. And I'm just pressing down. Important, don't be tempted to use a liquid glue. We will be removing these papers later on. You will be removing them when you are ready. Once everything's sewn together, all those 4 sections, later on we remove these papers, including the portion that's been glued, So I've just found that liquid glue has too much contact and you end up having paper staying on your fabric. It's not the end of the world, but it's not desirable. So avoid a liquid glue. Okay, we have that first piece glued down, and you would do the same with A1, B1, and C1. Same process, back to back glue. Got it. All right, now begins a process. We'll be talking about that thread set a little bit later on. But now begins a process, and we'll be using one of the most important tools in foundation paper piecing that was designed and created for just this specific facet of quilting called foundation paper piecing. This is called the Add a Quarter Plus. This is a ruler set. You can buy just the 6-inch, and that works for small projects like this, but I'm going to tell you, once you catch the bug of doing foundation paper piecing, Judy Niemeyer's are possible, okay? That's, to me, the most iconic foundation paper piecing quilts really in the world. To me, they're incredible. It is the same strategy, it's the same technique, and obviously you could be dealing with much longer angles and much longer pieces. That's why the 12-inch, just get the set. You're going to want that. And it's available in either the yellow or a really pretty pink. And I think for the pink, they make a small donation to breast cancer. That's why I think this one's $1 more. But hey, it's going to a great cause, and I like pink. We have found that's the most popular color. Whatever you choose, our next step is to now look at our section and say, okay, if I'm in D1, my neighbor is in D2. That's where I'm going to go next. That's where I'm going to do something. And notice there's a line between those two things. This is where the Add a Quarter Plus comes into play. There's a beautiful tapered edge and there's a lip right here. I will lay that tapered edge ever so slightly to the left of my line. And I'm going to fold my paper back precisely on that line, just like that. Once I check to make sure that I get that right on the line. If you're happy with that, give a real nice firm crease. Look one more time. Now I'll turn the Add a Quarter around. That lip, see how that just locks right into that fold? I literally slide that up and down and make sure I am locked in. This begins a process called TSP. Think of it like teaspoon, like baking. Trim, sew, press. And we're going to repeat this again and again and again. And that's catching the rhythm. When I say catch the rhythm, that's what I'm referring to. Okay, we've done the first portion is the trim. Here comes piece number 2. Same mission, same thing we need to do is to make sure that this fabric covers D2 and 1/4 inch all the way around. So there are many times where the next piece, you're like, well, wait a minute, it's not the same length as this. It doesn't need to be. Remember, this is not patchwork. It is attaching one piece to the next, but we're not making sure that this is the exact same length. So don't worry about that, because remember, the whole goal here is to be able to place these fabrics right side together. I'm going to simulate, just pretend like I had just sewn 1/4 inch, flipping it over, and then when I look from the front and I turn on my light source, look what I can see. Easily, there's lots of real estate out here, right? That's a good spot to position that fabric, okay? Once you have found that perfect spot, or a spot that would work, which this will absolutely work, I'm going to put a pin so nothing's moving. Our next step is the S of TSP. And the question is where? We will start just a few stitches before this line, so directly on the line, and stop just a stitch or two after. I don't want you starting inside this line and stopping inside. We want to cross our tracks to lock things in. This is why I do not backstitch when I do foundation paper piecing. I don't do that. Start a little bit before, and we're going to sew on a shortened stitch length of a 1.5. The default setting on a Bernina is a 2.5, so this is significantly shorter to add more strength, more thread in a given distance, and it's going to perforate the paper, making it a lot easier for us to remove. My needle of choice here, I'm not always grabbing for a different needle, but with foundation paper piecing, I am. This is a Microtech Sharp size 70. Remember with needles that when we go down in sizes, the needle becomes finer. It's inverse with thread. Don't ask me why. I don't know who dreamed that up, but that shouldn't have happened, but it did, okay? So if we go to a 70 needle, we're normally doing patchwork with an 80. This is an even finer needle, helping you to hit absolutely on that line, and it is so sharp. It perforates that paper. So be sure to pick up those Schmetz. That's just part for me. This is kind of part of my foundation paper piecing kit right here. This is my foundation paper piecing kit right there. And isn't that a small amount of supplies for what it can do? It's incredible. It's probably why it's one of my favorite things to do. Is there's not really a lot of notions here if you think about it. All right, we're going to sew here on the line and stop. Once we do that, we'll be coming back and doing the P portion, the pressing, right? So I'm going to make sure that I have my iron heating up, but I'm going to also show you how to use the Clover roll and press. We came back from quilt retreat here just a few weeks ago. I saw a lot of makers using the Clover roll and press because they had a shared iron. Like there were 4 makers with 1 iron. Or maybe the iron was across the room. Even if you're not using a shared iron, maybe you don't want to get up to go do that. So this is a great option. All right, but let's get that sewn first, and then we can talk about pressing. So you can see just before on the line and just after. Okay, so looks like I'll have to go find myself a pair of scissors here, but that's okay. I'll just use my rotary blade for now to cut some threads. But let's say I'm at a quilt retreat. I don't want to have to go to the iron. This is the Clover roll and press. I'm amazed at what it can do. This is made in Japan. I don't know what this is, but it is so hard that you can see that press, it's down. We can move on. We really don't need to use an iron. If you're like, I don't want to use that, by all means, use an iron. Here's the other thing. If you have little ones, your own children, your grandchildren, you're sitting, whatever that is, this is such a safer option. Once your fabric's cut, put your rotary cutter away. You can put your iron away. You're doing a little bit of sewing using a Clover roll and press. You don't have the danger and the worry of an iron. So this is a great option, not just because of the not wanting to get up, but on a safety level if you're ever concerned about the potential for someone grabbing that cord. So just want to put that out there. Okay, we did the kind of the border between D1 and D2, done. Guess what? The border between D2 and D3, that's next. Guess what? We repeat, trim, sew, press. This is the rhythm that I'm talking about. We grab for our add a quarter. We say, okay, I need to fold that back. But Jen, you asked me to sew a few stitches before. How am I going to fold the paper back if you've already sewn a little bit before? Easy. I'm just going to tear that ever so slightly. That's fine. Remember, we're not keeping the paper. It's going to be removed. Once again, add a quarter. Move that up so my head's out of the way. Just to the left of the line. You can also flip this over, by the way, and the add a quarter lays even flatter. Because think about it. We kind of have a ramp here, right? This works, and I can hold it steady and fold it back. But if we flipped it over, it's even flatter. It's even better. I don't have to hold it so, it's not so wonky, I should say. much more solid. All right, and we'll fold that back directly on the line. Check, yep, I like that. Rotate this around and flip it over so that little lip will lock in. Here we go again with trim. We need to add our next fabric, which is this cute polka dot. We had a lot of fun choosing the fabrics, as we always do for you. All right, so I'm gonna grab my light source. See, my instinct is this, right? But look, I haven't even covered even close. So it is this way. And I can see we definitely have that. Okay, beautiful. Hold that together, flip it over, pin. Okay. So let's look at where we're going to sew. There's just a little jog right here, that piece D6. I'm going to start just before the line, sew directly on the line, and I can sew straight off. I don't have to stop right here because remember, this is kind of the end of the piece. So I'll start right here on the line, stop, I'll just come straight off. Okay. All right, so here we are. Now what? Sometimes people go, okay, well, D1 and D2 touch. I get that that's the wall between the two, and D2 and D3 touch, and I get that that's the wall. But where do I go now? D4 is where we're going to be concentrating on over here. You always want to find the border, the wall between the space you're going to and the space you've already been. We already know we've been to D1. This is where we would go next. D5 comes later and D6 comes later, so it makes sense that this is where we will fold next. So of course we're going to follow the same convention. To the left, we fold back, right? We know we're going to turn that around, flip it over. We're going to trim. We're going to grab our D4. We're guessing. Do we think that's right? We need to do some checking. We're going to use our light source here real quick. Good spot. I like that spot. We know what to do, right? We simply flip that over, pin. So just before the line, on the line, and just off. D5, right? Same thing. We know we can either start straight off here and stop just after the line, or you could start just before the line and sew straight off. D6, you're going straight off, on the line, straight off, until you have all of your fabric for your D fabric on the back of your paper. That's what it's going to look like. Now, one of my favorite steps, that's like, because this looks chaotic. It is chaotic. You're like, I don't like that. The precision. This is the part that just brings a person absolute joy, is the ability to trim up here. Now, you could, if you flip over the outer quarter, you could absolutely put that along here. I find it quite slippery. I'm going to grab for a Creative Grid ruler that has grip. So when I put that on my line here, I'm going to be able to trim up. So here's my outer quarter. Here's the other thing I love. See that dash line right there? I'm going to put that dash line right there on that solid line, the darker one. Watch the dash line disappear. Why? Because it becomes one with that solid line. When you see that kind of dash kind of start to disappear, you are in the perfect spot. We're going to trim, move that. We're going to rotate this. There's a little bit of a jog in that corner. Every little nook and cranny, every little jog is very important to cut exactly on those lines because it's going to help us in our next step. Make everything just fit together. See that little jog down there? The more precise you are in this step and cutting all 4 of those sections together, the more precisely all of this just falls right into place. Don't remove your papers. Your papers are going to help you because this distance from this edge to that solid line is 1/4 of an inch. I don't even need to use my seam guide on my machine, okay? So in our pattern is letting us know the sequence in which we sew the shapes together. Let's look back at this. Our instructions are saying sew section A to section B. So this was joined first. And once we joined that, we didn't remove the papers on the A and B section, but we often remove the paper in the seam allowance. See that right here? Just helps that seam lay nice and flat and wonderfully, well, this flat, right? That's what we're always going for. After we did that, sew the AB unit to C. So now this is the ABC section, and now we're going to be adding D. The papers not only are adding stability, a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but they have information on that. Let's look at that. This side joins the ABC unit, right? It's like a roadmap telling you what to do, right? There's our A, B, and C. So we say, okay, let's look at that then. That makes sense. Look what happens when I flip this over and I put this in position. It is absolutely perfect. And this is what people love about foundation paper piecing, the precision, right? Phenomenal. Your job now is to carefully stack this piece to the unit below, and I want you to pin very well. And I want you to pin inside here. Don't be pinning out here. I don't want you removing those pins, having to stop and remove pins. Pin on this side. I'm going to pin a little bit better than I did there. I don't want anything moving. I'm going to pin here, and I'm going to pin here first. And then I'll pin everything else in between. But by pinning here, and I'm using right now, these are the extra fine patchwork pins by Clover. They're made in Japan. This has a glass head on it, and the gauge on this is so fine. If you're working with really, really thick fabric, go up in a gauge. Don't use these. But for what we're doing, this is exactly what we should be using because it's so precise that it enters the fabric and including the paper, but it doesn't disturb that. It doesn't disturb the position. It just holds everything in place perfectly so that now when we go to our machine, we're going to come straight on here, joining this line, still on the shortened stitch length. Never forget that. If you still have paper on and you're still sewing paper, keep that stitch length at a 1.5. Don't increase that. You're only going to increase that later on, right? After you've got everything put together and maybe you're adding borders. But even I keep the papers on. I'm getting ahead of myself when I put the borders on, but I'll talk to you about that in a bit. But let's join this up. It's very satisfying to bring it all together, seeing how incredible it looks. Okay. So let's see how we did. Let's check that out. Isn't that incredible how everything lines up? Our instructions and our pattern here are always letting us know our pressing. Here we have the double arrow that was pressed open. Here we're pressing toward that letter D. So let's just give a bit of, oh, see how it wants to do that? See how that's automatically is listing here? I see now why they did that. Okay, let's just warm up that seam. They're saying they want us to press in this direction. I agree with that. Sometimes I have a clapper out in case a seam is going to be pressed open and it doesn't want to. In this instance, you could use a clapper, but there's no need to. These two, absolutely. That seam just doesn't want to do that. How a clapper works in this instance is we use that to, over the top, be able to get our iron in, pressing that. They went ahead and removed the paper, pressed again, and then you put that clapper on and just let that weight of that clapper keep that seam flat while it's cooling. But in this instance, a clapper is not needed. I would, of course, remove my paper at this point. Why not, in that seam allowance? But as I mentioned before, even now, I would not remove the papers. Why? The next step is to add the borders. If I remove the papers right now, and it's always fun to do that, right? It's very exciting to get the paper off and you're making progress. I would then, as I add my borders, have to make sure that I am tracking a 1/4 inch seam allowance. But look at this. As I look at my block, I have my left and right borders, and I'm going to have my top and bottom borders. I would place that border strip here, pin on this side, pin, pin, pin in between, and when you go to the machine, you're once again sewing on the line. You don't have to find a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're sewing on a line. Do the same on this. Press it to the outside. Now comes the top and bottom. Same story, right? Sew on this side. Same. And press to the outside. Then you can go ahead and remove your papers. And if you have any difficulty getting in those little corners, right, where those papers are hard to get to with the fingers, just grab the gypsy tweezers. These have been out of stock for a while now. Hopefully at the time of this filming, these are back in stock. There was just a run. People have found these are the most incredible tweezers for so many things. We're just trying to get minutely. Even I use these for applique, small shapes that my fingers just can't grab, fine-tuning positioning. So these are great beyond foundation paper piecing. Then, what do we do after that? We like to grab our fusible fleece from Callie Dell. That's our new favorite. We're adding the fusible fleece to the back of the top, and your backing fabric is on the very back of that. You have your quilt sandwich, right? All of that's now your quilt sandwich, and this is where we like to introduce the thread set. We'll get in close so you can see. We're not stitching in the ditch. We're committing to letting you see all the beautiful thread here, and I love that. It looks very embossed. It's quilting it, it's just putting it all together, and it just emphasizes all of the incredible angles and all the things we just did with these very beautiful fabrics. So that's how we love to put that whole sequence together, do the top quilting, trim off any excess fusible fleece if you're using batting perhaps, backing, and then you're off to binding. And then you can decide whether you want to have that hanging sleeve. If that's you, go ahead and check out our earlier videos in the series where we show you how to make the hanging sleeve, we show you how to attach that binding, and then you're off to display the project. And isn't that fun to have something new to display for the month of August, right? And of course, these glittery wings get me every time. I love them. So head to the Shabby Fabrics website. We put our whole hearts into everything about these projects, from the design, choosing the fabrics, carefully cutting your fabrics, testing this pattern. Your foundations are included, your stickers are included. I'm here to cheer you on, to be sewing with you every single month. So head to the website to pick up your kit. Be sure to pick up your thread set and any notion you might need.